Hi, this is Kurt Stockwell with Well Dressed Walrus. We are a local website design and development company here in Spokane. What we do is build beautiful, usable websites for local businesses. A website needs to be beautiful, it needs to be usable for your users, your customers, and yourself. Contact us anytime. We'd love to talk with you about your online marketing.
Spokane listens when business talks. Welcome to Business Talks, the region's only local business talk show with your host, Ryan McNeese. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well Dressed Walrus. Now, let's get down to business with Business Talks.
Business Talks. I'm Ryan McNeese, and we're here in the studio with Emily Estey, VP and Senior Consultant at the Center for Sales Strategy. Thank you for being here, Emily.
You bet, absolutely.
Well, let's jump in and talk about what you do. But first, I want to kind of go back to the beginning. You've been in this business or around this business basically your whole life.
My whole life.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. My grandfather started a radio station in Ontario, Oregon in 1946. And my dad and my uncle both started radio stations and took over my grandfather's business. In fact, my dad just retired a couple months ago from the radio business, which means that our family's been involved in that business for over 70 years.
Well, what's interesting to me about that, when you can look back over that many decades and look at the landscape of the broadcast radio business, obviously in the last 10, but certainly 20, it's changed immensely. What's your take from your point of view, maybe from your dad's point of view? What have you seen?
Well, I mean, the world, there's been drastic changes. When my grandfather started his radio station, I mean, you think of Garrison Keillor, Prairie Home Companion. I mean, they were literally sound effects and doing commercials in a studio. And in his radio station, he had these big, huge studio rooms where they'd have a grand piano in there, and it was that kind of an environment.
Cue the piano.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and over time, especially in the last, I'd say 15 years, the digital landscape is heavily influenced traditional outlets. And even 10 years ago when I initially started working in radio, when I graduated from college, that was not part of the equation at all. So there were really kind of the big three: newspaper, television, radio, magazines to some extent as well. But even in the last 15 years, with the advent of the digital landscape and digital media, that has absolutely changed the landscape almost primarily from a fragmentation standpoint. Everybody's feeling that fragmentation. It is what it is now.
Explain a little more of what fragmentation means in this.
Yeah, if you look, you look at the newspaper industry or, the traditional media, obviously there are so many. If you think about your own consumer behavior as a person that consumes media, you're doing that in a lot of different places.
A lot of different platforms.
And many different platforms to look at. So everybody loses a little.
Right.
Some people in the digital landscape are gaining a little because they never had it before. But everybody's losing a little, so it makes it particularly important to understand what your message is, have your brand really strong, and then put it on the appropriate platforms. But I think what happens a lot of time is people get so confused about what is the best platform for me as a business owner.
Which would vary per the target market for that respective business.
Exactly. So you have to know a lot more about that as a business owner, I think. I mean, you probably understand this, but you really have to know who it is you're trying to reach and what you're trying to say, and then do it in the appropriate platform.
And what I find interesting about your background in sales, you go back to 24 years old, you're the general manager of sales for broadcast and radio, and as you're describing, an immense change. That takes you back into the 90s, the aughts, in terms of what you are telling folks and training folks as to what is the best type of platform, and that's changed so much.
That has changed. And what we do at the company that I work for now, we teach people how to sell. We don't necessarily teach advertisers how to advertise. We teach people how to sell. So that's
an interesting distinction, though.
That has not changed as much. I mean, really a customer-focused concept is what we teach people to use, and that hasn't changed.
Right, so the fundamentals are still there.
The fundamentals are the same. But I mean, even when I first started my career in radio, an owner could not own more than one radio station in a market. So the FCC, a few years after that, you could own more than one signal in a market. So then owners, that was consolidated and fragmented at the same time. So kind of interesting. It's been very interesting.
Well, and I remember there was a concept that we've spoken about before in terms of, I think I asked the question, what is the reach of one particular radio station? And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but was it Pendleton, Oregon that we were talking about?
Probably.
And I think you said about 170,000 individuals would hear a particular signal.
Yeah, it depends. Right? I mean, it depends on the population. The DMA is what they call the metro numbers of a certain populace. So that all depends on where you are. But everybody in the traditional sense, in the traditional formats, broadcast television, radio, and newspaper, have seen just a decline in numbers. But that doesn't mean that those aren't really strong platforms.
Right.
It doesn't mean that.
But that's, I think, what is so interesting about what we're talking about is that 170,000 folks, as we're using as an example, maybe one radio station, Pendleton, or somewhere else as an example. Now with such various platforms and the fragmentation that you're trying to figure out, is there a particular business that wants to be in many, many different areas, whether it's, hey, I want to be heard in Pendleton on that particular radio station. But now with platforms such as what we're doing here at Spokane Talks,
exactly.
I mean, it could be heard in Germany tomorrow.
For sure.
So I am fascinated with the breadth, if you will, or the expansion of where certain platforms can be heard or seen.
If you're in a local market, you really can't beat the reach of some of our traditional media. I mean, those are still really big numbers. We try to
talk about some of those numbers.
What we try to teach people is that those traditional platforms reach a lot of people, and now what you can really do as an advertiser, which you really couldn't do before, is send them right where you want to and onto an online platform so that they can learn more, become more educated, and engage in your product or your business or your service. So, but you still can't beat the sheer numbers.
I think I know what you're saying, though. The synergy, if you will, that the original marketing starts with the traditional platform, but then, as you're saying, to find more info, you're linking up to online, and then that breadth of information is
and one
wide.
of them, we always look at the traditional and digital platforms, but we talk a lot about integrated solutions. And the integrated solution is where those traditional platforms meet a digital platform. And, the power that a business owner has now to send consumers on a certain path is a lot more efficient than it used to be.
Do you feel like some of your, with your experience with your larger traditional clientele, if you will, has, not to say successfully created that synergy between digital and traditional, but how have they accepted that, generically speaking, in having to do that dual role?
Well, I think it's interesting because they're confused.
It's
confusing.
not what they're used to.
It's confusing. And because the digital landscape is changing just so dramatically all the time, obviously almost all the traditional vendors have a digital platform that they promote themselves. If you think about, they have their television station, and then they also have an online presence, an online platform. But if you're thinking about, what it's like to be a business owner and deciding among this huge, vast choice of what to do, we see a lot of times in people that we work with, they tell us that their clients are, we're only going to do things over in the digital space now, which then we miss out on those big reach numbers. And if we're only going to do things in the traditional space, and we'll still, it's rare, but we still have people say, clients that will say, not our clients, but clients of our clients that will say, well, I don't really have a website that's up to speed. And that's... I can't imagine that in this day and age. It's rare, but I mean, in the last 10 years that I've been working for my company, that certainly was the case, much more when I first started. And now, as a person that's selling traditional media, you really have to be an expert in all of these platforms now. So we're seeing salespeople kind of overwhelmed with all of the things that not only they have to sell, but what's coming at them from the client side as well.
I think you're making a very good point, though. The complexity of the marketing and sales environment has changed
It has,
immensely, and I think that's what you're hitting on. That if you go back to the early days, whether it be the 40s when your grandpa was getting involved, and then certainly the 90s, there wasn't this whole other platform that the traditional organizations had to think about. And they can't disregard it. That's kind of a classic conversation, I think, that you're mentioning, that you'll have some of these organizations say, we just don't do that.
Right.
Oh, okay. At your own peril.
Right.
And then deciding, of course, at your own peril, what to discard or what to get pretty good at.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about, where are you going to send someone? And we tell, we have our clients tell their clients, think about your own consumer behavior. And when you're going to shop for something, whatever it is, you used to take an auto dealer, for example. The only option you had was you might have heard about it on TV or on the radio or read about an ad in the newspaper, and then you went to the dealership.
Yep.
And there's this whole thing that happens in between there now. And,
the whole search process.
Right.
You're at a different place within the buying process.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you think about buying a car in particular, when you go on the lot, you're
ready.
What you need.
Yep.
Know what you need. And you think about the digital landscape, and in some cases has absolutely put businesses out of business.
I like how you're parceling that out, though, in terms of the buying process. And as you threw out, I think you got to consider yourself as a consumer.
Absolutely.
What do you want? How do you interact with that media? I was, like most folks, searching for something online the other day, and because of the plethora of choices of the different options, I could have gone to 10 websites to find the same thing. But why did I choose the one that I did? And it was going to be a $300 or $400 product purchase. It was the ease of use.
Right.
And so when you said a little bit ago, we don't do this or we don't do that. Well, if the user interface isn't working,
that's right.
They just lost that sale.
That's exactly right. So for a business owner to really have a good idea of what your consumer wants and finding them in the buying process, so the buying process at the beginning, where you're really wanting a bunch of reach, you're wanting to have this big message for lots of people, where they are in just a consumer's awareness of your product to the point of where they're actually going to buy it, you might have to speak to them differently throughout that process. And without the digital landscape, you didn't have that opportunity to speak to them. So for business owners, super important to know how your consumers buy your product or service.
And when are they coming to you?
When are they coming to you? And what do they need while they're making those decisions? And how can you provide it? Because you can provide it now. You can influence those decisions
and so
in the cycle.
The complexity of that process, is that what you speak to? You've been with this particular company since 2009, I believe.
2007, yeah.
2007. You are VP and senior consultant. Is this complexity what you spend most of your day doing?
We talk a lot about it. I mean, we talk a lot about where to find, how our clients can find consumers in the buying process and how they can provide the right information to that person.
Let's take a quick break and come right back and talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, cool.
I'm Mike Marzetta from Mind's Eye. One of my life's goals is to never grow up, never have to grow up. What could be worse? My wife, Christy, and I had kind of two fundamental values that kind of led to Mind's Eye's creation. We wanted to make the difference in lives of kids, and we wanted to have fun doing it. Mind's Eye Robotics is a high-quality, hands-on STEM education experience. We try to give the teacher a nice high-tech set of tools. We teach the teachers how to implement the curriculum in the lab, and 90% of it is them building, programming, formatting, designing, inventing. We want Mind's Eye to be cooler than Xbox. We want the kids to go there and come home from school every day and go, wow, I did the coolest thing today, and not necessarily know that they've learned all this stuff. Kids are very passionate about it. You can see that they're having fun, they're excited, they're energetic, they're in the zone. I hear a lot of it. How do I get my kids to do homework? Well, you make it fun, and they come in before class starts, and they stay late, and they're not thinking of the extra credit. They're thinking, I'm having too much fun, and I can't put this dang project down. It's college level stuff that they're learning. Change and learning are synonymous, and if you don't change, you get left behind. You got new companies emerging using new technologies and have a high demand for high skilled labor. They're good paying jobs. It'd be great to just hire some local folk to fill those. I think that we've got that kind of potential here in Spokane. We're graduating some great kids. When STCU supports learning, they're supporting our future. So many other organizations out there are so bottom line profit focused, I think they lose focus on what's important. I see STCU helping the greater community outside of it to get better, to learn, to grow, and to progress. We're here to do good. We're here to help the greater good. We're very proud to be able to partner with STCU to that end. I think what's a better place to help the greater good than with helping kids? I'm Mike Marzetta, and STCU is here for good.
Hi, this is Kurt.
Welcome back to Business Talks. I'm Ryan McNeese, and we're here in the studio with Emily Estey.
Hi.
Sales professional.
That's right.
VP, Senior Consultant, Center for Sales Strategy. Right before we left for the break, we're talking about the complexity of the marketing and sales landscape and the ever-changing environment for that. And what you do all day is trying to weave your way through the complexity for clients that are looking for the target market,
right,
and how to weave them through the broadcast radio business. Tell us more about the process and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So the Center for Sales Strategy is a company that's been around for over 30 years. We specialize mostly in media organizations, and we help media organizations select and find great media salespeople and media sales managers.
Not easy to do.
And sales managers, and outside of the media landscape, we can just say sales managers and salespeople. We help them assess talent and find talent. Our slogan is turning talent into performance. So we help select, and then we help train salespeople and sales managers mostly within the media landscape.
Where is the business based out of? Because you work here locally. Here in Spokane.
So we used to be headquartered in Tampa, Florida. But about, I'm going to say probably 3 or 4 years ago, we went 100% virtual. And so there's a little over 40 people that work for my company, and we live all over the United States.
So are you regularly on sales calls at all different
mostly client calls with the clients, client organizations that we work with. I also head up, I do a lot of work for what we call insights. So I help our company develop category trends, consumer trend information. So for instance, if someone's calling on you, I would help provide information about the legal category in order to help a salesperson come and talk to you and be educated when they do.
Understand of a foundation.
Yeah, so I project manage that part of our business too.
You were just mentioning that with the slogan of what was the slogan?
Turning talent into performance.
Easier said than done.
Absolutely.
Talk to us a little bit more about that, because let's say you have 100 resumes, or maybe 50 resumes that you're looking at, that clearly the resume shows that these are talented individuals.
That's right.
How do you assess and make your way through the filter, if you will, to find folks that are going to be productive in this industry?
Well, we work with a company actually called Talent Plus out of Lincoln, Nebraska, and they've helped us develop talent assessments, particularly for salespeople and for profit center managers. So people that are managing a profit center organization where they're supposed to make profit. So we every salesperson that applies for a job with a company that we work with goes through a talent assessment, and what we're looking for is a particular set of talents that we've found that salespeople have.
So almost an algorithm.
Pretty much, yeah. And we've worked with Talent Plus to develop those interviews and those assessments. And then once we, what we tell our organizations that we work with is there's 2 things you really need to know. You need to know what you're looking for.
Right.
So the
which
analysis.
That's interesting that you say that, though, because sometimes folks skip that.
They do.
We need someone.
That's right.
But what for?
That's exactly
And
right.
you're answering
And more often than not, when a position is vacated for whatever reason, people are in a hurry, and that can be hard. We talk a lot about having a talent bench, about those people that you're in contact with. You may have already assessed them. They have some talent, but maybe they're working somewhere else. The timing isn't right. But I have this bench of people over here that if I do have a position,
the depth of the bench,
I could pull someone off that bench and say, hey, start the conversation again. So we encourage that, but we also really encourage people to know exactly what they're looking for. What is the job? The
scope of
job analysis, what is it? And does this resume fit into that? Then do they have the talent to succeed? And then also, is the fit right? If you are a real positive manager and you really like someone with lots and lots of positivity, and you're sitting in front of someone who doesn't have that, but they have all these other talents on the page, that's not going to be a great person for you to manage, because, in your day-to-day interaction with that person, it's going to be like, you're kind of with Debbie Downer, that's not fun for you as a manager. So we talk a lot about that, not only define what you need, but who you like to work with, and that fit piece is important.
Getting beyond the page, meaning I think one of the biggest struggles with resumes, most folks you would look at, it's hard to be overly critical that this individual might have the requisite skills on the page, but you just touched on something that's so important, is that what are their interpersonal skills that 5 in a row might have fit the scope.
Right.
But you indicated this one happens to be a Debbie Downer, if you will, or this one is highly energetic and that works, and maybe the highly energetic doesn't work in the next circumstance.
That's right. And you'll have a manager, it's a tough job for sure, but they're looking at a resume. They know that this person has the talent to do the job because they've had an assessment, but something's not clicking right when they're sitting in front of them. But they're like, I don't trust myself enough. I have all this evidence here, but you really do have to take that piece too. Your internal instinct to be able to show up at work with this person every day. Is that something you want to do? No, and do I want to manage this person?
No, I think we've all lived that experience.
For sure.
Where do you see your role, maybe within the company, but more so, where do you see the sales process and the management process and the broadcast business, radio business going over the next 5 to 10 years? How do you see what you do changing? It certainly, we've talked about it's changed over the last decade and more. Where do you see it going?
I think certainly integration is key. Really, that's still a conversation we have a lot with salespeople and sales managers, is really being able to speak to how an integrated solution is the right solution for an advertiser.
Not just one platform.
That it's not just one platform. And for them to really understand how all of those platforms work together to sell what they're being asked to, what their clients and prospects want to sell. So continuing to teach on that, but also, one of the biggest jobs we have is staying ahead of the digital landscape. And we have people on our team that are designated for that. I don't happen to be one of them, but
tell me about that. How do you do that?
Well, you go to, we have our association with the with all of the internet, broadcasting associations, and our
not the NRA.
The RAB and TV associations and internet associations. We go to those meetings. We have people on our team that go to those meetings. We have a lead generation portion of our business too. So it's really trying to stay one step ahead, but it's almost impossible. Really, I think people that are on our digital team would say that. It's reading a lot. It's being kind of one step ahead.
Understanding maybe the vibe that's out there.
Any information that they can and being informed. And what we try to do is take things to our clients that they haven't heard about yet and teaching them those things so that they can be ahead of the game. It's ever changing. It's really hard to predict. I could not have said, 10 years ago when I started that, I probably could have said it, but how much we as a company had to, immerse ourselves in the digital landscape in order to be informed for our clients.
And I think that's a good point, because you said you started there in 2007, and that really is interesting, because you look back at, Facebook was becoming so popular right in that particular time. You're talking about a decade, and look what's changed in a decade. Right. You're right, the entire landscape has changed.
It has, and there's always the next big thing, and then assessing that next big thing. Is it really the next big thing? Like, how much time do you give it? And in fact, it doesn't take very much time anymore to see if something's going to, grab some teeth from a social media standpoint.
Like, is this internet thing going to really hang on?
Exactly.
Is this really going to be around?
That's right.
I think it is.
Yeah. You think about technology of even geofencing, if you're familiar with that term, where, now with a mobile phone, a business owner can find when that particular prospect is coming into their space and then send them a coupon so they'll be enticed to come into the store.
Incredible.
It's unbelievable.
And from a political standpoint,
it's
potentially,
crazy.
that you're understanding clearly that as we just were having the elections
That's
here
right.
in November, that and our whole conversation has been about taking the information, but on what platform and for who at what time in the
That's
buying or voting or what
That's
have
right.
you in the process.
That's right.
So much psychology.
Yeah, and what we try to really teach people is to help business owners find that brand and find who they're really trying to talk to. Let's think about your heavy user of your product or service, and what do they look like, and where are they, and how do we attract that person? It's the psychology of marketing is certainly very interesting, and I think it's confusing if you don't have somebody to help you, and that's
what you do.
That's what we do, and that's what people we teach do.
Yep.
That's what we try to make them experts, so that they're a real resource for business owners and big companies, medium-sized companies.
Well, and I think anybody that's been in business or done pieces of what you're describing can appreciate the importance and value of what you're doing all day long for these clients. Because if you break it up into the sales or the management or the HR, the marketing, clearly all of it has a psychology and a nuance to it.
Right.
And that's what you're making understandable,
Right.
tangible for these companies to make decisions every day.
That's right.
But
And I think you and I talked about at one point that you were like, I have these degrees, but I don't have a marketing degree.
Right.
I don't know what the best answer is. So to trust some of those people that specialize
That
in
do
that,
that.
I think is an important piece for business owners and marketing managers and those kind of people to remember.
Well, one of my favorite lines is the Zen phrase: if you want to know how the trail looks like up above, ask somebody coming back down the trail.
That's right.
And I think it's what you're describing, though, is if you haven't been the head of HR or head of marketing or CFO or what have you, ask somebody that has.
That's
or
right.
or bring in consultants
That's right.
that are.
That's right. That's right.
You can't do it all.
No, you can't.
can't do it all.
You can't.
Not every professional has all of the expertise throughout the organization. It sounds like you love what you do.
I do love what I do. We coach and train. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a teacher, and
that's what you're doing.
That's what I'm doing, and I don't have to go to middle school to do it. No, God bless you, middle school teachers out there.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. Like, I'm really lucky in that I coach, I train, I work with really talented people because of the assessments that we do.
Right.
I mean, our managers and salespeople that we work with are highly talented, and that's a real joy too, to see people in the right job doing what they love, coaching and training those types of people,
And seeing the improvement.
and seeing the vast improvement because they have the talent to do the job.
Well, there's never going to be a shortage for the need for what you're doing. Emily, where can folks find out more about you or the organization?
Sure. So the centerforsalesstrategy.com is our website. That's the best place to start if you want to find out more about us. And there's a bio of me on there. If you're that interested, you can look at that as well.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you being
You
here.
bet. Thank you.
Business Talks is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well Dressed Walrus. Business Talks wishes you good business and a good day.
Hi, this is Kurt Stockwell with Well Dressed Walrus. We are a local website design and development company here in Spokane. What we do is build beautiful, usable websites for local businesses. A website needs to be beautiful, it needs to be usable for your users, your customers, and yourself. Contact us anytime. We'd love to talk with you about your online marketing.
The economy is getting stronger. Banks are lending again, and interest rates are at historic lows. Now is a great time to buy your dream home. The caring and knowledgeable professionals at Homes for You have been helping people just like you for over 20 years. They take the time to listen to what you want and will help you find just the right home in Washington or Idaho. Real estate is what we do at Homes for You, 928-5782, or visit online at homes4uspokane.com.